All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Herding Squirrels, a podcast about modern teams. Joining us today is Allison McHenry. Allison, welcome.
Hi.
A little more about Allison. Allison McHenry is currently serving as the CTO of Daily Kos, a progressive political blog. Previously, she was CTO at the Daily Beast and has also held leadership roles at Meta and the New York Times. She most loves thinking about ways to enable teams to use technology to move socially conscious businesses forward. Allison, we're so excited to have you here.
Excited to be here.
For our first build, what I want you to do is build a model that tells a story about who you are outside of work.
Okay.
All right.
So I made a model with me in the middle, kind of turning around on this little turntable here. I have a 23-year-old daughter who lives in London at London School of Economics, and that's her over here. I have a 21-year-old daughter who is in San Diego this summer doing an internship at Princeton Young, so they're kind of opposite each other. And then I have 5-year-old twins here in the middle with me, and that's me kind of trying to get to everybody in the middle.
I love it. Oh, that's fantastic. The use of the rotation is wonderful. You're just like, I gotta keep looking around. Although I feel like probably you're focused a little more on the twins at this point, I imagine.
Yeah, they are.
Allison, I'd love you to think about what is the best team experience you've ever been a part of, whether as a leader or participant, and I'd like you to build a model as to why that experience was so amazing. All right, I'd love to see your amazing team experience model.
So this is a simple model, but it has multiple meanings. So I'm going to be talking about my experience at the New York Times as the executive director of the standalone product group there. So that was where I was introduced to the concept of Paloma Medita's BICEPS model, which talks about belonging, status, equality, predictability, choice, and improvement, or feeling like you can have an opportunity to grow in your role. And I really found that to be a very impactful way of thinking about what motivates people. So the colors are representative of that process, just thinking about how you can look for each one of these motivators for each member of your team. The second thing that I was thinking of was how in that role I was leading games, cooking, audio, kids, parenting, but just like new product experimentation in general. So we were trying to look for businesses that the Times could invest in that could be standalone subscription businesses, which was a fairly new area for them at that time. And what made that so much fun was we were looking for how creative we could be in terms of markets that the Times hadn't explored yet. So it was really an opportunity for people to go out on a limb and try something new with the security and backing of the Times, which was a really unique opportunity for everyone involved. So we were really trying to grow a 0-to-1 business situation, which is so much fun.
Wow. So out of curiosity, what did you notice most? Actually, let me step back here. Was this model already there when you arrived, or did you implement this model?
We had a consultant, Laura Hogan, who came in and was working with leadership teams based on this model. So it wasn't implemented, but I wasn't the person who did it either. It was something that we just worked through as a team.
And what would you say were the biggest changes you noticed from? It sounds like the model also combined with some opportunity to do some really creative work.
Yeah, the work was really creative. It was a very interesting time at the Times. Black Lives Matter had just happened, and that whole thing was kicked off by an editorial in the Times, or opinion piece rather, written by Tom Cotton, and it was very hard on the staff at that time. So talking a lot about belonging, inclusion, what does that mean for a diverse staff, was a very difficult but wonderful conversation that happened amongst the leadership team, but also among all of the teams at the Times. So thinking about how do we structure that conversation, how do we make it safe, how do we hear our employees of color when they're talking about how this opinion piece impacted them was really meaningful. We were doing a lot of thinking at that time also about pipelines in tech and how people get into entry-level roles. And what do people from diverse backgrounds need in order to feel like they can do their best work in an institution that has been around for 100 years and, might be a little off-putting to someone from a non-traditional background. So that was really impactful work as well.
Sounds like it. Sounds like it very much shaped your leadership journey.
Oh, yeah.
I can imagine. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. Wonderful. All right. So, Allison, I want to jump right into the next build because it's the opposite of what you just built, which is I want you to think of now the worst. What is the worst possible team experience you've ever been a part of? And don't worry, you don't have to expose who or when or where, but more or less the story behind it. Why do you believe the team experience was challenging? What was causing the challenge and the potential dysfunction in that experience? Right. Perfect. Well, Allison, let's see your model.
This is my model of leader on top. All the people below that person just stacked on top of each other, and then the people at the bottom going in opposite directions. And this is something, in my career over the last, few years in leadership, some of the most challenging aspects of it have been around just externalities, challenging business environments, challenging situations where there had once been, as much money as you possibly could want for hiring and growing people, and then all of a sudden that changed and there's no longer the case anymore. And that externality of uncertainty makes everyone from leadership straight on down feel afraid, insecure, concerned about, am I going to lose my job? How am I being evaluated? Is this business even going to be around? There's a lot of anxiety. And this has been true for at least the last, since COVID, probably. So it's not just, any individual business. When that happens, what I've observed is people tend to push their anxiety down the leadership chain. So they want to get more micromanaging. They want to get more in the weeds with what people under them are doing. And they also can't provide some of the BICEPS security that I was talking about before, with regard to certainty, status, improvement, growth. All of that stuff goes out the window because people are just worried about, this existential concern about business security. And I've talked to so many people, and leading during a time like this where you're trying to get the best work out of your people, you're trying to, create a good product, you're trying to run a team that feels cohesive. It's very hard to give people that sort of sense of purpose and mission when you're navigating these more challenging economic waters. So then you get people who aren't bought in, who don't know what you're doing, who don't understand, just totally going off in their own direction at the bottom there, which is understandable.
Yeah, it's a level of chaos, right? There's so many things that are out of control.
Yeah.
But why do you think that kind of pushing, one of the phrases you use is kind of like pushing it down down the team, down the leadership
Right.
level? Why do you think that is? Why do you think that occurs in that type of way?
People want to control what they're able to control, and most people feel like managing up is very hard to do. If they have impact on their leadership team, it's easier to stress out on the people, below you about, are they meeting their deadlines? Are they, doing their work? Rather than, is leadership making the right decisions? Cultivating an environment where people feel comfortable telling leadership, challenging feedback, things that they may not want to hear, is very hard to do, but also really impactful and important when people can make that happen. So some of the best run places I've seen have been places where they wanted to hear from employees and from customers about what was and wasn't working, how they could improve the product, doing market research, user research, talking to people, out in the world about what was working for them and what wasn't, just to make sure that feedback loop was closed.
Just open the communication lines instead of shutting them down, right? And kind of closing in. And I picture the ostrich, right? I'm not going to stick my head in the sand, but actually let's keep it up and pay close attention to what's happening all around us. That actually leads really into my next question, which you've already kind of answered with that, but I want to go a little bit deeper. How do you view the changes and what's really happened with leadership and with teamwork over the past 5 years? Like we've had this chaos of externalities, and then on top of that, this really big shift to remote or hybrid work, right, depending on kind of where you're at. How have you seen that change, either your leadership style and how your teams work together?
You have to be a lot more intentional about communication if you're working with people in multiple time zones and multiple localities. You have to be much more culturally sensitive. People may not be eating lunch at the same time or, even available at the same time. I feel like as a leader, I need to be much more available because people, might need me at different times. So, I need to be on and ready to respond if something occurs where I'm needed. I think on the positive side, people really appreciate being able to work when and where is effective for them. And people, if they have the opportunity, bring their loyalty to companies where they feel trusted. So I think that that's been really positive. The change with AI has been the single biggest shift I've seen in my career. I mean, I've never seen anything change so much so fast. And I think we are still trying to figure out what the downstream impact of that's going to be. I think nobody really knows. And it's still changing like just that fast. So that is something that I feel like, I have thoughts on that, but it's just happened so fast.
In your view and where we're at with AI, even now, right, knowing it'll be different 3 weeks from now, I'm sure. What are some of those impacts that you're seeing, either positive or negative?
Well, the hope is that people will be able to focus more on impactful work and less on combing through spreadsheets or analyzing legal documents or, some of this like very detailed work that AIs are good at. The worry is that people are going to ask the question, can an AI do this job before we hire for this position? And labor cost is the single biggest cost of any employer. So I think that's a fair concern. I think figuring out how to strategically use AI to do what AI is good at and not what people are good at is something that, we as an industry are going to be grappling with. But I think also we as society need to think about. I read something that was like a third of all entry-level white-collar jobs are going to be gone in 5 years. And, what do we do with that labor, these people? Is something I think is just not known yet.
Do you find the people you work with or you lead, like how are you seeing people's opinions on AI evolve?
This is obviously a big topic in media. The question of, do we want to, Cloudflare just released their ability to charge AI crawlers, publishers to charge AI crawlers to use their data, train on their data. Do we charge crawlers to use our data? Do we partner with organizations to try to at least get in on it? Do we try to put a hard wall up and say, you can't use our data? Like that's something that I think the media industry really doesn't know yet. We're seeing huge impacts on search traffic refers because of the Google AI summaries. We've seen impacts on social. There was a talk at a publishing conference I was at not too long ago about Google Zero. What happens if your Google search traffic goes to zero? How do you cultivate these one-to-one relationships with your audience so that they come back to you and they trust you and they know that you are the place where their community is or the place where they get their trusted journalism. That's something that's we are all trying to refine our unique value proposition as far as that goes.
I think like part of what I'm hearing too, and I think this is a little bit everywhere, but with combining the chaos of all the externalities over the past couple of years and add in COVID and now add in AI, like how, one, it's a lot, and two, how do you stay grounded as a leader and stay hopefully refreshed and take care of yourself so that you can help lead and share the path with your team?
It's really important for me personally to feel like I have enough of an idea of what's happening that I'm not reacting all the time. So how do I, read all the things and listen to all the podcasts and follow along just to make sure that I know what the conversation is and what the possibilities are, so that even if my team isn't investing in something right now, I can talk about the strategic pros and cons is really important to me. And then you just have to be able to turn it off, watch a movie, hang out with the cat,
Yeah. Allison, this has been great. Do you have time to do one more build?
Sure.
All right. So I think for our last build, I always like to ask our leaders this question. is I want you to imagine that you have a crowd of new leaders about to start in their first role. I'd like you to build a model that shows some advice you'd like to give this group of new leaders about to walk into their new role.
Okay.
All right, Allison, let's see your advice model.
So here's my advice model. So one of the most impactful experiences that I have had as a leader was I had I forget if he was a senior engineer at the time who wanted to try management. And it was a really different job. And he decided that, after 6 months wasn't for him. And so it was so powerful for me to help him go back to being an individual contributor. So my model has, these two pathways, the management and the technical leadership tracks, both with flags on them, because at well-run companies, both of those are viable paths to being a leader, being a technical IC or being a people manager. And people get stuck in seeing this advancement as being, I have to go manage people, I have to go manage more people, I have to get a bigger title. But in reality, knowing yourself and having that self-awareness is so critical to whether this is even what you want to do. So ask yourself that question. And there's that Meister or trust equation, which is credibility, intimacy, something divided by self-awareness. And I always thought the self-awareness part was just so important because everyone always forgets that piece. Yes, you should be, reliability. So you should be reliable, you should be trustworthy, you should be, vulnerable, but also know yourself, I think is really important. And then I put the person at the top because no matter what you're doing, this is a people business and you have to care personally about your people. And that's the thing that everything else comes from is, that empathy and that desire to support people. So if you have that in the front of your mind, making decisions about, I want to drive the business forward, but I also want to do it with concern for people, that will help you, just succeed in general, I think. So that's my advice.
I love it. That's a fantastic model. Thank you, Allison. All right. So, Allison, I have to ask, what was it like to build your thoughts and ideas out of Lego bricks?
I have never done that before. It was super fun. I have 5-year-olds, so I am very familiar with Legos, but yes.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. If our listeners want to find you elsewhere, do you have any blogs or socials that you'd like to point people to?
Allison McHenry on LinkedIn. Super easy.
Perfect. All right. Well, we'll include that in our show notes. Thank you so much for joining us, Allison. And thank you to everyone listening. Again, this is Herding Squirrels, your podcast about modern teams.